Hi, everyone. Uh, so I guess I should give some time for people to settle down. Okay. So cool. So I'm Harshit Thukral, and I'm a senior software engineer at Rippling. And today I'm excited to talk to you guys about web accessibility and how we can leverage it to empower inclusive React experiences at scale. So on a fun part, I'm also a secret dev accessibility advocate inside Rippling. So what it means is like I'll find your Slack channels and your threads, and I'll make sure whatever we are building is up to all the accessibility standards and ARIA guidelines. So just to give you a preview of what this talk is going to be about. So we'll start with what is accessibility in general. Obviously, like one has to be aware of what they are trying to build or solve before they go ahead and solve it. And then we'll see like how it fits with React because like eventually we'll be leveraging all the power of accessibility with our React components and all the different aspects that you should be aware of before you proceed and develop any of the components. Next, we'll see like the component migration and testing. So here I'll be shedding some lights on how we at Rippling actually went ahead with our design system and how we made sure like all our components are unit tested and in particular for accessibility and what the rest of the path would look like. And beyond that, there will be like product migration and telemetry. So once our components were accessible and in the right hands, then we had to make sure that we were able to pass on that knowledge to all the different product teams and developers in Rippling so that they can go ahead with their different product areas and go ahead with their migration and for their particular respective modules. And the final would be app level testing. So with the speed and scale Rippling operates, it's easier for some of the issues and aspects of things and all the bugs to reoccur and like creep into production. So we wanted to make sure like there's a way to catch all these issues in the source itself while development. So finally, let's start with what is accessibility, which we also called ally, just to save a few milliseconds of our lives. So by definition, it's the ability of an application to be used by as many people as possible. So if I like translate it for you, so any user who lands on our platform should be able to perceive, interact, and understand like what's the information available, irrespective of their disabilities or any of the like impairments they may be facing. So they should ideally have like the same level of opportunity and right to the information like all of the normal users have. Now let's talk about why is it needed. First and foremost, softwares are for users, right? And if I take US data for an example, so this is the last available data I have from 2020. And as you can see, close to 26% of users have one or more disabilities in their day-to-day lives. And if we see the further breakdown, people are facing issues with mobility, and the next one is cognitive. So cognitive is like if someone has some problem concentrating or understanding the different aspects or the recent information they actually gathered. And so they also have issues like making decisions. For example, you have a couple of buttons, so they'll also find some challenge around that. Now, obviously, like there would be like there are people who have like some hearing aids, and again, like people with visual issues, where like things cannot be directly cured by external implants, so they can't directly take help from glasses and maybe expect to fix their like disability or impairment. So one thing which I want all of you to take out from your head is accessibility is just for disabled users, but that's not the case because subconsciously we all have been using ally features on daily basis. For example, we like dark themes because that suits our eyes well. And like we also use browser zoom to kind of increase and decrease the size of the text because again, like it's available for us to take advantage. So eventually it's the responsibility of a developer like who are responsible to make sure like their app is as humanly inclusive as possible. So and beyond that, if you feel like that's not enough, so providing accessible experience is also becoming a legal thing. So in a lot of countries, including US, where you have couple of sections. So if I say like ADA, we stand for Americans with Disability Act, and you have Section 508. So these two sections protect the rights of users or especially the disabled users who need like all this support to be able to use all these platforms. And as a matter of fact, like in year 2020 itself, there were close to like 3,500 lawsuits which were filed particularly under these sections. So before we proceed further, here are a couple of terms that we need everyone to be aware of. So first one is WCAG, which stands for like Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So it's an international standard for all the guidelines that are used for accessibility. And they have multiple levels like 2.0, 2.1, and 2.2. And they are for like further divided into AAA and AAA, which we'll talk about in the subsequent sections. And the next one is assistive technology. So like this is just an umbrella term for all the like assistive tech that's available in the market. So predominantly like you must have mostly heard about screen readers, but all your styluses that we use on our tablets to interact with the content and everything and joysticks. So they all come under assistive technologies. So now that we know what ally means and given all its principles are framework agnostic, so to catalyze this talk a little bit, I think we can start to throw React into the mix. And for someone who wants to like dig deeper into all the principles, I have attached a few critical like important resources at the end. So you can always dive into the principle if you are like if you want to explore further and maybe take ahead for your like accessibility journey. So to give a slight bit of taste, I've created a minimal example with an icon, which we are using as a CTA, just a button. And so the icon, like you can see, like it's clearly visible. It has all the like hover styles and everything so that like you can see it has all the background and all the pointer styles. But from the implementation point of view, it uses just a standard div and has like we are entering that plus sign with classes, and it takes a on click. So works like a charm from a visual user point of view. But for someone like who's using keyboard navigation, if they start to interact from the top and it's completely skipped, and like as you can see, like it jumps from first anchor to the last, and same in the reverse order. So that's a complete no-go from them. So let's fix that. And to fix that, like we have introduced a couple of new attributes. So first one is role. So like by role, it's just a way to tell your the all the ATs like screen readers and all that it's a button. So there is a standard set of ARIA roles that you need to provide so that they can understand what to be communicated to the user. And then there's a tab index, so which is required. So it's not necessary, like passing tab index is not necessary because some of the components, they inherently adapt or like adopt all the focusable attributes like button, anchors, and all those things. But in case, because we are using a div, so we'll inclusively have to make it a like focusable element. Now on key down, which is like, again, so if anybody here is not aware, so it's an expectation from a button to be like triggerable from their space and enter key press. So now that we have a button, so that's another problem that we have to solve. So for that, we have to add a custom handler so that we are listening to all the like key events and all that stuff. So now our icon button like also supports keyboard navigation. So that's first win. But if we talk about screen reader, right? So if you see in the bottom left, so these are the attributes that are visible to a screen reader. So again, like our button, after all this fancy stuff, is still a Voldemort of buttons because it has no name, no description. It's just with a role button because eventually that's what we have passed till now. So to fix that, before we move on, I think we should first understand how screen readers and li tree actually work. So let's say you provide some HTML to the browser, like coming through different formats. Let's say in your case, if you are using React, so eventually it will be taking, you will be shipping some standard container, and inside that you will be rendering through JSX. So eventually everything goes as a JS DOM, whether through whether it's coming through virtual DOM, through reconciliation, or as a standard HTML. Once you have a DOM tree, now browser gives you the JS API or the DOM APIs to actually interact with DOM. And the other responsibility it has, if you see on the very top, it renders all the visual layers for you to actually interact, which we generally use with our apps and websites. But there's another responsibility which is not talked about enough, is generating an accessibility tree. So that's another thing which is used by, so this is at the focus of our own, the whole conversation. So this li tree is used by the assistive technologies, which we discussed, like all the different frameworks we have. So starting with screen readers, and then they use this li tree to actually communicate everything to the end user, where this here about like whether it's a button, whether it's a region, they are in a section or side nav and all that kind of stuff. So this is a kind of a like a sample li tree which I wanted to show to you guys. So on the left, you will see like I have a sample wiki page, which the whole structure, it's a standard wiki page, nothing like serious about it. And on the right, we have the whole like li tree generated out of it. So like you can see, we have a main container which represents the main content on top, like there's on like there's other root view. So and inside that you have like the whole hierarchy where each element has its role, whether it's a button, link, and all that stuff. And in parallel you will see like the like set of descriptive text. You have like all the, which we'll see, like you have different ways to provide and maybe help browsers to generate these like accessibility trees for users to understand. Now, this hierarchy is all taken up by these ATs, and they kind of, again, use it to communicate to user. So, but it's our, again, responsibility to make sure that we are able to communicate all those details to the user, and we help our browsers to generate a better li tree. So for that, we have ARIA attributes. So coming back to our previous example, so what we have added in this particular thing is like the last two set of attributes, if you can see. So we have ARIA label, in which we have set it as add more. So it just gives a user a better understanding that it's a add more button. Now, let's say you go to somewhere, like you are in a desert and you see a add more button. You still don't know like what you are going to add. Once you, like, whether you opt in or whether you opt out, you don't know, like you just see it. So that's how like it appears to someone like who's just relying on like keyboard navigation and screen readers to maybe like navigate through your whole app. So to help them further, we have added ARIA description, which says like click here to add more to-dos. So which again like just makes your app a little bit more usable for those kind of users. So eventually, like, this is the difference that you see between a AA standard compatible and a AAA standard compatible React application and experience. So now, out of all these examples, like you would have seen, like it takes a very critical and like very patient kind of like evaluation to make sure like something is accessible. But like we can cut this part a little bit had we use a native element. So instead of using a div, had we used a button, so then we could have skipped all those ARIA attributes, because by default it has a role of button, browser understands. Then they are inherently focusable, so you have all the focus abilities. And then basically they also handle the enter and space key press, so you can always like trigger, and they are accessible by default. And one more suggestion I generally tend to give to the people or the developers actually is that you can say the ARIA level, which if you could have like just passed some text, let's say we had passed add more into the button itself, so that would have like increase the usability of all your things for normal as well as visual users. So that's a like that just like saves you more ARIA, like all these random attributes. Apart from it, like that also like increases the experience for someone who's using it visually. So that benefits both of the kind of users. So these are some of the examples I have on the bottom left. So you can say section. So people generally use, like, they have a div, they avoid any migration because there are a lot of tests that must be failing once you change the selectors and all that stuff. So they pass in like the role. So avoid doing all these things if you have an equivalent like native element. So instead of creating a div and giving a class side nav, try to have a side element which takes all these attributes and things, like all the set of things and stylings that you want to provide. So don't change the inherited like all the attribute tags. Now we'll come to component migration and testing, and the approach we followed to kind of like go ahead with our design system. So Rippling has a whole design system because we are heavily invested in React in that like particular stance. So we did all this exercise that we just gave you for a particular smallest of icon components. So we did this for all our components. And till now, when I'm saying 90%, so particularly like all our in-house components are as per the guidelines. There are a few like external libraries that we are working with to make sure like they are also following all the guidelines. And all our in-house components at the end of the day are manually tested across screen readers. So they have all the like li specific automated and visual testing. Plus like each of these components that we have in our library, they expose all the ARIA attributes for product teams to configure for their particular spaces. And on top of it, like we provide all this philosophy if somebody is interested and they want to deep dive into like understanding why a particular attributes, for example, are you multi-selectable, and all those things exist, and what's the use case we are trying to solve. So now coming to the most critical part of the whole process, which is testing. So before I proceed further, I want to make a kind of a disclaimer that whatever approach you go ahead to automate your testing, whichever platform or framework you choose, the most reliable way till date to test your component and make sure it's accessible is only through screen readers and doing it manually. Whether like if you can afford a luxury to have some actual users who need these kind of supports to get it tested, that's even better. And preferably we recommend testing them across multiple screen readers. So you have like JAWS, which is the most used screen reader across in the market. You have VoiceOver, which comes pre-installed with your Mac OS. It's just like a 2-button click away. You can press Command F5 and it just shoots, and maybe it doesn't even stop. And then you have other one, which is like NVDA, which has a fair share of its users. So these are the three like market standard screen readers that are available, and you can always use it. So, but with that said, you would have seen like most of the testing behavior is still driven by a right set of attributes and things that we are passing to our components. So if we can just automate at least that part of things, whether they are assigned to the right set of components, they are like giving the right set of behavior, and if that particular attribute is allowed on that component or not. So at least we can tick the first part in our checklist that a component is accessible or at least on the right path or not. So for that in comes Xcore. So if I talk about X a little bit, so it's an open source LI testing engine which successfully captures, at least they claim to capture like 57% of all these issues just by looking at your DOM health and what are the attributes and how the DOM structure looks like. And at least, like I said, that it allows you to test the first part of the whole testing journey. And on top of that, it also comes with a lot of cross-platform integration. So for example, what I have here is I'm using JustX, so which is like a unit test like compatible. It's made for Jest environment, so you can use JustX, and this is like the whole testing like the LI test looks like for a component. Again, we have an icon here. So it makes it a lot more declarative and shrinks the whole thing. And what even I have here is actually a bit verbose because we have a utility. So if we can extract this logic out in a different helper, so that would just allow you to basically just write 2 lines and your component would be like tested for accessibility in no time. Cool. So life moved on. While we were developing our components, we are testing things. So but there's like we found a slight issue with our Jest test. That was like that's more of a byproduct of how Jest actually operates. So it doesn't have an actual DOM. So it uses a mock implementation called JS DOM to kind of mock the behavior of a DOM API. And so again, like because it doesn't render your component actually and visually. So there are some of the tests that you need, for example, color, contrast ratio. So these type of things can still crawl under the table, and you wouldn't know like when by the time you'll know like it would be already in production and things like that. So which means like we had to like integrate another add-on called Storybook add-on Ally. So we integrated it with our internal Storybook setup, which is used by our design system developers to develop all these components in a standalone environment. So like which also helped us like catch all these visual issues. So as you can see, like we have an accessibility tab in the canvas itself, which has like all 3 bifurcations of like issues which are incomplete, then they are passes, and then they are incomplete. So like violations, passes and incomplete. So violations are clear violations, like that's one thing. Passes is like that's again like there's no gray area in there, but incompletes are the ones which are actually like some of the elements were meeting the demand, some were not. Plus these are actually the issues that should be tightly and strictly tested with screen readers because they kind of vary, and there's like even the documentation is not pretty straightforward for them. So now moving on to the product migration of things. So till now we have only talked about components, but components are for developers, and for actual users, it's the app that matters, right? So what we did was we as I said, we wanted to hand over all that information to our product team so they can move ahead. And because we saw like there are a lot of ARIA attributes and a lot of careful things that you have to pass to a component so that eventually it becomes accessible. So just to cut their effort in that, so we made it easier for these teams to basically by extracting all the li specific logic in a separate hook. So what they can do is they can pass all the DOM specific or the component specific props to the hook, and any metadata that makes more sense to them, rather than going for like ARIA multi-selector, multi-selectable, they can just pass is multi-selectable and all this kind of thing. So that would just make it easy for them. So the kind of standard we were following is, so we have a hook called use combo box. So in li terms, the combo box is any select drop down which provides you inline search, inline suggestions. So those are actually combo box in all the ARIA standards. So what this helped us was this helped us prevent mistakes and not worry if we are passing the right set of arguments or not, and rather it was easy for developers to pass the things which made more sense to them, and the hook took care of rest of the things. So the components, the components were migrated, and we know how to pass the effectively pass all the right set of attributes. We see how to test these components. Now the only thing that we found missing was tracking, right? So where we can say these are the most common and critical issues that we have in our app. These are the routes we are facing problems with, and so that developers have a clear visibility of things where they can start their progress. So guess what? In comes Axe again, right? So we integrated Axe Core with our main app, where we run li analysis directly on the live browser, because what's visible to the user is actually what matters at the end of the day. So the only challenge with the whole setup we had was that Axe actually takes it's a heavy process intensive task. So on an average user on a standard browser, it takes around 500 to 1000 milliseconds to execute, which is somewhere between half second to a 1 second task. So we again wanted to make sure it doesn't impact the performance and everything on a user's browser, in terms of they shouldn't feel any janky effect because something that's relevant to us is executing in the background. So for that, we made sure we only run these tests or this whole analysis on healthy devices. So the how can I say, the final calculation if a device is healthy or not is actually dependent on a couple of things, which is if the user machine is actually having the right number of logical CPU cores or not, if they have the enough RAM. So browser has this API in the navigator which provides you all these kind of details. So once we were aware of these details, we integrated that. We know it's only running on healthy devices, and the whole data pipeline started to flow. We had the whole data coming, and so this complete data is then bundled into a dashboard which provides all the telemetry required, where you can see what are the common issues, what were their last occurrences, and it again points you to all the documentation and critical things that this node is not really compatible, this is failing. So you can just take that help and go ahead with their migration. So now each product team knew what are the routes and where they need to start and how they actually need to fix these issues. So the ability to test our apps for accessibility was the final nail that we wanted to add in the whole workflow. So that would allow us to complete the full circle. And we could confidently say there's no regression. And because with the speed and the number of products actually Rippling provides, so there's a high probability of these kind of things happening where you are migrated, but then you are doing a development, and in sudden short you have a couple of more issues on the production, and then they are finally reported by the end user. That's a painful task. So what we did was we actually set up our own internal workflow for li testing on top of our existing Playwright testing E2E suite. So so what we did was if a user, let's say, or a developer actually creates a PR and they are failing tests, we would just block the pipeline then and there. So we won't allow any such further if there's any migrated thing, and if you have the right set of tests in place, so we won't allow the PR to go further, and that would just block it at the developer end itself. So the only way to move ahead then would be to just fix all these issues and move ahead with your development. So what this allowed again was this allowed us to make sure that li testing, all the li practices and frameworks are just any other development practice, we have testing, we have making like all the visual things that are visually available to the user. So we wanted to make sure like it's again a standard practice and it's a first class citizen in all the development cycles. So again, like here also, we wanted to assist the developers by providing them a clear insights into what's failing. So we integrated like we provide them all the HTML reports where they can see like all the different, again, like the same stats, which is like what are the issues, what's the impact level of them, what's the different standard it falls under, and all the like affected nodes, and any again help doc reference where they can just directly go and get into the insights of things and fix it for themselves. So with that, I'll call it a wrap. And as promised, here are some of the important resources for anyone who wants to take this as an opportunity and maybe go ahead with their journey for their company and maybe start their like accessibility roadmap. So yeah, I think that would be it from my side. So any questions?